Excellent. All right. Okay, everybody, if you are in the right place, we are doing a virtual group TA session for the Summer Funding Collaborative applicants. And tonight our focus is writing for WOW and writing specifically for the Summer Funding Collaborative application. So we hope we will get you through this tonight and get some tips that will be very helpful. If you need more assistance after this, we will talk about all the other great ways you can get technical assistance, one-on-one sessions, other PD sessions. There's going to be lots of help and opportunities along the way. So I am just going to go ahead and we can go to the next slide.
Maybe.
So quick introductions. I'm Ellie Mitchell. I'm the director of the Maryland Out of School Time Network, and I am joined by my colleague, Crystal Snyder, who many of you may not have met yet. So I'll let her do a little bit more of an introduction.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Crystal Snyder, like Ellie said. I am the new learning coordinator with the Maryland Out of School Time Network. It's a new position, so we're just kind of figuring everything out. I have been with Out of School Time programming in center for the past 18 years. So last year at this time, I was right where you guys were, getting ready to figure out summer camp and that kind of stuff. So I come with a lot of experience running and participating in summer camps and everything. So, you know, I hope that my experience lends you guys some, you know, good tips and everything for getting summer funding.
And we also hope that we can provide some insights along the way, but Crystal has been a great addition to our team. So let's go to the next slide. Just a little bit about MOST, for those of you who may not be familiar with us. We are the Mott Statewide After School Network and the affiliate to the National After School Association for Maryland. We are statewide, and we are here to really increase the quantity and quality of after school and summer learning opportunities. We have a website, which we encourage you to go and visit. And while you're there, please subscribe to our newsletter. It is chock full of grant opportunities, workshop opportunities, you name it. It's everybody says it is a valuable tool, and it comes just every 2 weeks, so we won't be spamming your inbox too much. And we hope that you'll join us there. And we always put as many notices out as we can through that newsletter. So next slide. All right, so let's just get our chat box working here. And we'd love to have you drop your name, your organization, and how many years, if you have been running summer programming for years, in the chat. So just join us there. If you can't for some reason join us in the chat, you can jump off mute and tell us these things, but otherwise let's go ahead and drop those things in the chat. So name, organization, and how many years you have been running summer programming. Seeing lots of names. Got 6 years, 5 years. So we got some real 4 years, 6 years. Awesome. 5. What this? Ooh, 12. Wow, somebody jumped up there. Yeah.
First year. Okay,
first
great. Year.
Welcome. Welcome.
Yeah.
Second summer, 4 years, 13 years. Awesome. So we have a few folks who are the first year. Excellent, excellent. 10 years in a supportive role. That, yeah, sometimes you change the role that you're in. I know I was talking to somebody yesterday who they've partnered with another organization over time, but now they want to have their organization be the lead in the programming. So great. This is a nice mix of very experienced people and people who are new to this process. So hopefully we'll be able to speak to all of those things. And we're not done with the chat yet. We have another question we want to pick your brain on so that we know that we can really address people's concerns during this session. So before we jump into this, we just want to have a little SFC proposal therapy. Like, what part of this particular proposal is keeping you up at night? What is stressing you out the most? What parts of writing proposals in general are worrying you? But really, if you have like a particular section of this proposal that makes you crazy, or you look at it, you're not sure how to budgets. Yes,
Yeah.
I can feel you. It's always hard to know that you've make sure that you've included everything, that it's reflected properly, that you're categorizing it the way people categorize it. So yes, budgets are very stressful. What about anybody else? And you can jump off mute too, if you want to, and share in this section. We all need to get it out. Just let that stress be put on somebody else's brain.
I don't think they give us enough choices as far as which area of Baltimore. I never see my area, which is McElderry Park. And I feel like I'm not being, like I have to choose Madison East End or Middle East or Patterson Park North. And that's really not my choice. I don't know what, I don't understand that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't give us enough choices.
That's a good question. I wonder if they're using like the Live Baltimore neighborhood list or something like that. And I think that you should definitely, I think there's actually some folks from the Summer Funding Collaborative on tonight who can take that feedback back. I also think there may be places in the proposal that you could say, I checked this box, but we really are located here.
I don't want to give them no reason to question my grant now.
No, I understand what you're saying, but
no, I ain't gonna do that, Ellie.
I think most people who are familiar with Baltimore know that there is a McElderry Park, right? And that is a neighborhood. So I think it is important to be able to speak to the needs of the people that you're going to be serving specifically. So I think it's okay for you to say, we check this, but we really mean this. Okay, so the outcomes, outputs, and objectives. That's great. Let me go back. Meeting the requirements correctly and executing budgets. The wording is important. We're going to talk about that today, about, making sure you're dotting all the I's and crossing the T's, including too much versus not, and giving enough info. And I know with the character counts, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too, it can be really hard because there's a lot more for you to say. So we're going to talk about how to highlight things and still meet those character requirements. For the outcomes, outputs, and objectives one, they've actually changed the question a little bit, and I think it might help folks in how they're thinking about this. The question is now, how will you know what will have improved by about we'll get to that the exact wording of the question, but it's kind of like what's going to change as a result of your program. So they've gotten a little less technical about those outcomes, but we'll also talk about how to make sure that you're still getting to those great outcomes when you answer that question. Cost, measures of cost versus outcomes. The fact that we don't get feedback, I know that's really rough. And I think you just have to kind of understand too that there are so many applicants and there are so many funders, and each of the funders has different priorities. So it may be hard to synthesize all of that, but I hear you on all of that. All right, any more proposal therapy? I think we're going to address some of these things as we go along.
In terms of the feedback, I mean, I understand that, but there's a community review process, and we don't get the feedback from the community review process either. And that's written up, because when we got funded, we got the feedback, but when we didn't get funded, we didn't get the feedback.
So duly noted. So also putting that star and ask.
And we asked for it like at least 7 times. You're muted, Ellie.
I'm just saying we'll put a little star asterisk by that for when at the end of the process of us doing TA and making recommendations, we make some recommendations back to the SFC, so we will add that to our list.
Wait, sorry. So sorry, I was joining from another device.
All right. Did we lose the echo? Okay,
Yeah.
we're good. All right, excellent. So like I said, we do make some recommendations back to the SFC. I will put it on the list. Can't make any promises. We don't really participate in the review part of this. We're always on the TA upfront side, but we can definitely join in on the voices of trying to get more feedback to you guys. All right, so next slide. So if you're gonna take anything away from this session tonight, it's that you know your program best. You have to write from your heart when you're putting your proposals together. So you just have to really focus in on what's unique to you and what is different about your program. What is the things that you know are most impactful about your program, and write those with the greatest truth and authenticity that you can, and it will come through in your proposal. So if you get anything from me tonight, that is the one thing I hope that sticks in your head when you go to put pen to paper. You've got to really make it pop. So tonight we're going to go over a few things. So let's go to our agenda. The challenge that you face, this is a little bit of an uphill battle. We're going to talk about that. We're going to have 6 different strategies around the writing that should help. We're going to review all the group and individual TA options and professional development sessions that are still available to you. And we're going to take some questions and have you complete a little survey about us. So that should take us to 7:30. If we get done before then, that's great. If not, we will make sure to use all the time well and wisely. And I did just notice that there is a note that you can request community review process feedback from 2022, and you can email summer@Baltimore's Promise to get that. So that's great. Let's go on to the next slide. All right, Crystal, do you want to go ahead and
Yep,
take this?
Sure. So one of the problems that you guys are probably going to face is that it is really competitive. So last year, the FSC received 190 applications for funding, asking for a total of 13 million. Of that, 93 programs were funded and 53 were fully funded. So they can't fund everyone, unfortunately. And they totaled awarded 5.3 million. So just under half of what was asked for was what was funded. So they try and fund as much as they possibly can, but unfortunately, there's just not enough to go around for everyone. If we could fully fund everyone's programs, that would be the dream. So the awards ranged from 5,000 to 287,000, and it just all depended on, what was in that application and how the community reviews went and how, your budgets were laid out and everything, how much you asked for. So hopefully going through this tonight will give you some tips so that we can help you maximize the amount, that you're going to get, have you, really feeling in a good place for the amounts that you're asking for and everything. The average award was 57,443. So, kind of take that as that's about the average that they funded last year. So when you're thinking about how much you're going to ask for in funding, kind of take these stats from last year and sort of think about that and how it works with your program and your program's budget and how much you need to run your summer programs and everything.
Yeah,
And there's
I think, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and there's 4.8 million available this year. So there's a little bit less money available this year than there was last year, but they will probably use all $4.8 million. So really make those presentations pop and wow and everything so that yours gets looked at.
Yeah, I think a lot of people always ask us, like, how much is too much to ask for? How much is too little to ask for? And I always answer kind of the same way, is that you should ask what you need for your program, but you should understand that you're probably going to fall somewhere in this range. So if you're really far outside that range, then you need to look and see if you how your budget, is it reasonable? Can you adjust anything? Because I think just staying inside the range is really helpful for folks. All right, next slide. So, and I just want to say, I'm not trying to be discouraging at all. That's actually a good question, Bianca. I'll come back to that in a second. I don't have that data available, but it is possible you might be able to get some of that data. Like a different number might be like the average cost per kid or something like that. So that's something we can look into. I think it's really important for you to go ahead and fill this application out for a lot of reasons. It will introduce you to many funders all at once. Some of these funders fund outside of the Summer Funding Collaborative in addition to funding inside it. It helps you with other grant applications to just go through this process. Articulating your program goals and outcomes is always a good practice, and you'll have this available to you on hand to use in the future for future applications, and maybe even for applications that you might want to think about for this coming summer itself. So highly encourage people to fill this application out, even though it is competitive. It is useful to go through the process. All right, next slide. This is one thing I always say, is that one of the biggest challenges with these applications is that they are very generic. So people, you'll see that across applications, there are very common things. We're a great program. We do great things for our kids in our community. We do food, enrichment, academics, STEM, health and wellness, arts, and the kids are running around. So the only problem with that is that's like every program. So you really have to delve into this uniqueness. So next slide. So that's what the reviewers are going to think if you use the generic terms. So what we're going to help you do is give your proposal jazz hands. You need to make it unique and different from that genericized every summer camp program. So next slide. All right. These are our 6 strategies. I'm going to have Crystal jump in for these first 3. I might tag team with her a little bit, and I'm going to take the last 3. Yeah, let's just jump in.
So the first thing is we want to make sure that we're using our time wisely. Really plan out how you're going to do things. Get a folder together, read through the proposal at least one time beforehand so that you kind of know what you're doing. Because if you've read through it, some of the questions kind of, there's a general question at the beginning, and then, you can really get some more of your specific information in later questions and stuff like that. So you can really kind of start to pull all of your information together and make sure that you're not writing the same thing in each question and, and stuff like that. Always keep a copy of your work. I know if you were on any of the orientation videos or meetings that Shoshana did, she really talked about do it in a Google or in a Word document or Google Doc first, and really get everything written there, excuse me, so that you have it. And then when it's all ready to go, then you just copy and paste it right into the actual online application and everything. So just make sure that you're keeping everything organized. You've got copies, you've got kind of backup copies. Tackle those questions that are the easiest ones for you to tackle first. If the passion for your program is easy and you can write that down, and knock that out first, and then really have to sit down and work with your budget and stuff like that, like get the easy stuff done first. That way it's done, it's out of the way, and then you can move on to, those things that are a little bit more challenging to write and stuff like that. Is there a print button at the end for a copy of the grant? Ellie, I'm not sure about that. Do you know if there's a print button at the end?
That's more of a technical question, but we'll get it answered before we leave.
Okay. And make sure that you're leaving time for fresh eyes. There are, if you go on the Summer Funding Collaborative website, there is a link where you can go in and there's technical assistance that you can do one-on-one meetings with quite a few of us. And we can read your proposal beforehand, kind of have those fresh eyes, take a look at it, come in and say, hey, what about this? I hear that you're talking about this, but could you, mix it up this way a little bit or something like that. So, give us time to be able to go through and read those things, make appointments with us, make multiple appointments if you need to, so that we can help you. We're that outside entity that doesn't really have a stake in either side of it, other than we want you to be funded. We want everyone to be funded and everything. So, really have someone look through it. Even proofreading, we all know in our heads what we're trying to say, but sometimes it doesn't quite come out on paper and stuff like that. So really give time for, that fresh set of eyes and everything.
Yeah, Julie, your comment is great. And we're going to suggest a number of different readers as we go through. So somebody who's not totally in your organization, who doesn't, and who's not necessarily a summer youth camp person, if they can understand it and it makes sense to them, that's really a good way of having it looked at. I know that nothing leaves our office without multiple people checking things, like our newsletter. If I do it or if somebody else does it, somebody else checks all the links and makes sure that everything is good to go. So just as many people as you can possibly have see it is great. And we're getting closer to the deadline now, so you probably have most of your stuff figured out, but fill as much out as you can in it. Then you should be able to just be able to go back in at that last minute. If you're waiting for that one partner to answer a question or whatever, you're just filling that in at the end. And yeah, don't assume the reader knows anything about you, your work, or curricula. I say this because people just drop the names of curricula into these things thinking, oh, everybody knows what 100 book challenge is, or everybody knows what this is. Not necessarily the case too.
So this is sort of a timeline that we put together. you know, how things should be rolling along and everything. So we're in the first week of January. So you guys are attending group sessions, you know, schedule those one-on-one technical assistance sessions. Also, get your stakeholders input, talk to your families, talk to your kids, you know, find out what are the good things that you're doing in your programs and stuff like that, and really start to get input into, you know, the things that you can include in your application and everything. Next week should definitely be the week that you're having someone go through and proofread. That's the week to really get it kind of tightened up, and, you know, having someone proofread and go through and help brainstorm, make sure that you've answered each question. And like Julie commented, don't assume the reader knows anything. You know, get someone that's someone in your program maybe to look at it, and also someone outside of your program to take a look also. Again, that's what the technical assistance leaders are here for and everything. So make appointments with us, and we are here to help out. And then don't forget, like, mark on your calendar with a big star, put every appointment reminder that you can, that the due date is the 13th of January, as Sophia, or as Shoshana has stressed quite a few times, they cannot accept any late applications. So that date is drop dead.
Yeah, and I really encourage you to try to have it in the day before. You don't want to end up with technical issues and you're sweating and dodging the bullet for the final countdown to the last few minutes that you can turn it in. Technical issues always rear their heads then. That's when your internet goes out, or, you know, something's going to happen. So give yourself that buffer of at least a day to you know, I know it's always hard, but if you can plan it back, it just will, you'll be so relieved that morning that you've turned it in and it's already done. No questions.
No questions. So the next strategy that we wanted to go into a little bit was tell your story and be unique and specific. So if you look, we kind of highlighted question number 31 that says, please describe your summer program and what participants will experience on a daily or weekly basis. So this is where, this is, you know, where you want to make sure you want those jazz hands. You know, you want your program to stand out from every other program. It's a short one. It's only 1,500 characters, including spaces. So, you know, you can't ramble on for pages and pages and pages, but you want to make sure also that there is enough information. We like to call this your elevator pitch. What can you get out in 2 minutes from the first floor to the 10th floor to make someone say, wow, this is a program that, you know, we want to be a part of. This is a program we want to partner with. We want to fund and everything. So you want to be concise, but not general. So you want to make sure that you are putting specifics in there. The rule of 3 is always a good rule to go by. Things are, you know, more interesting and more enjoyable, more memorable if they're set in groups of 3. So highlight 3 things that you're doing in your program this summer. I'm sorry. Highlight 3 things that you are going to be doing in your program this summer that you can really talk about. And
yeah, that's okay. I'll take over for you, because I the other way you can bunch the rule of 3 is to do it in a narrative fashion, like a beginning, middle, and end. So you can sort of tell the story of a day in your program, but give like not just repeating what you have already in the schedule, but giving a much more flavorful feel of how students are greeted when they come in, the kinds of activities that they're doing, maybe some specifics about those activities, the kind of partners that are coming in, some specifics about those partners, and how the program closes, maybe how you do celebrations, that kind of thing. So just thinking about structuring that in a way that allows the reader to kind of experience the full breadth of your program, but still having that sort of beginning, middle, and end idea. That's another way you can use the rule of 3 in that section.
And like we said before about being specific, don't assume that anyone knows anything about your work. Instead of just saying we do STEM programming, we're going to teach the kids about STEM, like really pick out what do you do specifically? What do you do that's a wow? Are you doing something with animal science and you're planning on, taking the kids to various farms outside of Baltimore City or something like that? What is going to be that wow, that specific wow, instead of, just it's a STEM camp and, the kids are going to be learning science. Are you doing robotics? Are you doing, aerospace technology and stuff like that? So really, make it wow, put those specifics in there so that the people that are reading your applications are like, wow, this is a really great program. They can get that picture in their mind of what you're planning on doing in the summer with the kids.
So this applies equally to arts. I was saying earlier, I always denigrate macaroni art. If anybody really loves macaroni art, please don't take offense, but there's a big difference between gluing macaroni to a paper plate than, let's say, doing a quilting project with a quilting expert, or designing a tile mosaic, or whatever other kind of project. So I want to know, as I'm reading the proposals, if you say arts and crafts, do you mean macaroni art, or do you mean something much more meaningful and impactful than gluing macaroni to the plate? Because arts and crafts does not tell me the difference between the macaroni art or the mosaic tile project. And also, when I say arts and crafts, and I have a great arts and crafts partner, like, the quilting expert or the mosaic tile expert, I don't get the opportunity then to share also about that expert partner that's part of that program. So the specificity, it still has to be pithy, it still has to be to the point, but as much as you can describing the actual what kids are doing, hands-on, minds-on in your programs, it will definitely pop off the page. Because again, as I said, I read these proposals all the time. People just make lists. They make lists of what they're doing, and the lists don't always tell you much about. So, hey, Julie says, what do you think of participant quotes and feedback? I think that's great. I also think you have to be careful about your character spacing. And so whether or not that quote tells you something new about the program, or if it's just like, oh, you're great. So, so if the quote is like, this is transformative because I got to do X, and so it's really telling about the program itself, as well as praising the program itself, then I think they can be definitely helpful. And there might be places that you could put those quotes that are not in that 1500 descriptive thing. So for instance, like, how do you engage your students and families in voice and choice? You might be able to actually use a quote in that section. So I just think it's being very strategic about where you're using your character limits and how you're using your character limits.
So we were talking about, don't forget those W's when you're using the 4 C's for the 21st century and everything. Use your who's, your what's, your when's, your why's, your how's. And again, in that number 33A that asks you to talk about what your outcomes are and, describe your program and everything, you can hit some of it, but if you see through down, like, what will the experience be? You want to define what hands-on means. We're doing hands-on activities. Well, what does that mean? Kids will actually be able to build a robot. Kids will actually be able to make a quilt. Those kinds of things, so that people understand what hands-on really means. What are they going to actually produce, make, get out of the program? Where is it going to take place? Are you going to, like I said, go on a field trip where you're visiting farms for, you know, animal science or something like that? Are you going to, you know, visit NASA Goddard Space Center or something like that, if you're doing a space program? So really be specific in those kinds of things of where you're going to, where your program is going to take place and everything. Why does this help your goals? So really talk about, you know, think about what goals are in there, what goals you have for your program and everything, and how the funding is going to actually help you reach your goals. You know, if we are fully funded, we can do X, Y, and Z. You know, the money from this grant will help us to do that. And part of that will also come through in your budget, because there is a space in the budget section where you can actually like write a little narrative of each of your kind of line items and stuff like that. So again, gather all that information so that you have it when you go to answer the specific questions. You know, really talk about who is providing the instruction, and you can kind of give a little short piece of that in 33A, but then 41, question number 41, really asks you to talk about who is going to be providing instruction. So that really gives you that opportunity where if you mention that you are having an expert quilter come in to help the children learn how to make a quilt, you can expand a little bit more on that, you know, when you're talking about who's going to actually be providing the instruction, what the qualifications are of your staff members or your other partners that are coming in to help run your program.
And Mary says, what about the historical importance of the location and why it's important in your community? I think that's great. Again, tie it back to the actual activities of your program. If you are doing oral histories of the community, or you are studying the history of that space and the surrounding community as part of those activities, definitely highlight that. I just think everything has to tie back to, again, what the experience is going to be of the young people in your program and how that is meaningful in their lives. So if you have a great historic location and that is part of the background and setting of the activities that you're doing in your program, absolutely highlight that. Otherwise, you have to be, again, really careful about your character limits, that you're not like waxing poetic about the historic nature of your building, but not saying why that's meaningful to the camp itself.
Okay, so strategy number 3 goes a little bit back to what Julie was asking about, you know, your youth and family voice. Make sure that you are getting their feedback when you're writing your applications. Talk to them about, you know, some of the outcomes. If this is your 2nd or 3rd year that you're doing the camp, and you have children who have attended, you know, in years past and everything, and they can talk to you, they can say, you know, what they've gotten out of it in the past and everything, you know, use that youth voice in there. Again, being strategic about where you're putting it into the application and everything. But definitely, you know, use that youth voice. Remember that they are all going to go through the community review process, and young people are going to be reading these also. So 14 to 24-year-olds will be reading through your applications as part of the community review process. So if you have a 14-year-old in your program, you know, 16-year-old in your program, have them take a look at it, have them read it, see if it makes sense to them, especially those questions that are specifically marked that will be part of the community review process. You know, and kids have great ideas. They can definitely say, well, oh, no, this is really what, you know, you might be thinking that they're getting this out of it, and they, you know, have a good idea of what they really got out of it. And it may just help you pop that little bit of extra wow into, you know, where you're describing your program and everything, to hear it from their perspective. So give it to them, have them read through it and see if everything makes sense. That way the community reviewers also sort of have a, you know, you can make sure that the community reviewers are going to understand what you are putting into your proposal, make sure that they're understanding what's happening in your programs and stuff like that. And Ellie, you are on mute.
Strategy 4. So this question, I think, used to really trip people up because this was more of the, you had to pick 3 to 5 like specific outcomes and goals. Now that it's worded, please describe the ways you think your participants will be better off as a result of participating in your program, and how will you know that this has happened? It's still the same basic idea. You want to pick goals that are SMART, that are measurable, realistic, time limited. Again, you don't want to say, oh, all our kids are going off to college if they're in 2nd grade. You got to really make sure that you are making these goals and objectives super relevant to your program. They can be process goals and they can be outcome goals. So things like, every student will have a portfolio at the end of my program is a totally wonderful and great outcome. But also maybe you have something that you do that you're actually measuring some kind of change between the point 1 and point 2. Maybe you're looking to see for greater confidence or like confidence in public speaking, or you're looking for something like that. All of those are wonderful. Again, just make sure that they are connected directly to your program, and that will make it, that section, the most compelling. Don't just be like, oh yeah, they're going to get 7 more points on their writing scores or whatever. That may not be believable in some situations. In some situations, you may have that kind of outcome data, and you can use that, and that is what you want to put on the paper. But I would say, know your program, know what you can achieve, be realistic about it, and be proud of it in this section about what you think these really great outcomes are. If this is another way of showing off your program, really, in this section, saying that at the end of my program, my students feel better about these things. My students are, they've achieved something, they've completed something, they've completed some kind of great task, like an art project or building a robot or creating a portfolio. All of those things are great outcomes, and they are a way of saying, this is why our program is different and effective and unique. So definitely I'd say, this is not a throwaway. This is not like, oh, I have to put goals and outcomes here because they want us to, talk about academic success. I think you're really selling yourself short if you aren't really putting exactly what you think, how students are impacted by the end of participating in your program in this section. Because again, it goes back to highlighting the thing that is unique and special about the program that you lead. Okay, the skills and knowledge questions. These go a little bit back to those 4 C's questions. And it also is a little bit of an outcome measure in some ways, right? Like, what are the skills and knowledge that participants are going to develop in these different focus areas? What about timing? An evening resource for organized activity in Baltimore is important. I think that the most important thing about your program design is for you to say why that program design is impactful. So if doing an evening program, particularly let's say for teens, is part of the design of your program because that's the feedback you've gotten from participants or from the community, that is something that you can write about in that in that description of your overall program. We're hosting an evening program because we've heard from the community that that is something that is necessary, and it has the outcome. And again, to your question, is that maybe you can build an outcome around the crime reduction piece. Got to be careful. It's got to be realistic. It's got to be measurable. But one of your outcomes could be the safety of the students in the program, or some other things like that. This question is another great question to set yourself apart. So describe how your summer program exposes participants to opportunities that build on and expand participants' day-to-day experiences. So that is the dream of summer in many ways, is that you want to give opportunities to young people that in lieu of your program, they would not ever have. So you may want to ask yourself as you're looking at this question and as you're looking at the design of your program, what is that you are doing that without you, that these young people would never have experienced? Now, I want to be careful to say that doesn't mean you have to take them out of their community to do that. There's so many things you can do within your community that do build and expand upon participants' day-to-day experience. If you want to take kids out of their communities to expose them to new things, that is great too. But that's not there. You can do it both ways. So just be very clear that I think there's lots of different strategies for exposing participants to opportunities that can be very place-based and very community-based, and can also be about going outside and beyond that community. So I just think it's this is like another 1,500 characters that really gets to set you apart in your description. So you can be very, I think, again, paint the picture of the experience of how it impacts students. This may be a great place to use one of those quotes that Julie asked about earlier, like how did this program change my life? How was this program transformative? You can use a quote here for that. I think that would be a great place to put that quote. Okay, everybody's favorite topic, budget. Go. Okay, so I think the way that they have set this up for this year, this is almost, it's better because I think the previous applications, they had a budget template that was separate, and it was pretty easy to kind of mush things around in there. Here in the new way they have the application set up, they're going to have line item narrative, line item narrative, line item narrative. So you're really going to be able to explain your budget in a much more detailed way, I think, than those charts, those previous charts had provided. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't all add up. Your budget number can be completely different than your ask number, because maybe you have revenue, income, in kind, other things that are going to make up other parts of your budget. So that total cost does not have to add up to what you're asking for. So make sure that you're just being clear in your budget narrative about how you are paying for the rest, basically, if your ask number and your total cost of your summer program are different. So what's your strategy for the rest of the revenue? And because the budget narrative now, the way the budget is set up is, line item narrative, the budget narrative question at 47 will really give you the opportunity to explain anything that didn't fit in those 500 characters on those other lines, and to highlight that in-kind piece, because you're not going to be able to have the in-kind in those other numbers. So you want to add that to the budget narrative. I saw Julie just ask a question. If we are one of the Friends Merit grantees, should we include that commitment beyond committed funds? So Julie, I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to have to check on that, but I would assume that if France Merrick has given you some funding for the summer, and you're applying for Summer Funding Collaborative, that you would put that in the other pending, in the other sources of funding in your budget narrative section. But I can double check on that, because I'm not saying that with entire surety, but I will try to get the answer to that. Right now, we're looking for answers for maybe average cost per kid, like how many kids were served through that last year's program, and then also see if we can get some clarity on that question for you. All right,
Yes.
moving on. Okay, I don't really have to tell you all this, but just go ahead and follow the directions as much as you can. And this is why I think it's super important to go through it all right now. There are frequently asked questions that have been asked in public sessions or by people that are published, and you can continue to ask questions until January 10th. So please, 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 if you have any confusion about anything in the proposal, you're just not sure about it, ask the question now, because we won't even be able to answer those questions after the 10th either, like technical questions about the RFP. So go through there. If there's any fog in your head at all about what a question means, what's required of that question, all that kind of stuff, that is important to do. So really appreciate that. Transportation, what does that include? So Mary, I think the transportation question, and I can go back and pull it up, is transportation versus travel. Is that a budget question you're asking?
Yes, so if I look at that and I'm talking in terms of doing a trip versus reimbursing my staff or something for
Correct.
traveling time, I wanted to make sure transportation meant both of those things, because that's what I think it
Transportation,
means.
yeah, transportation would probably be also related to transporting students. Like, let's say you're buying bus passes or you're renting vans or things like that. That would be transportation costs. And then travel would be, I would think, related to staff travel.
Ellie, on the virtual orientation, that question was asked, and that's sort of the same explanation that Shoshana gave, was that transportation was more towards how are you getting the kids there? You know, do you have buses that you're going, or vans that you're going out and getting the kids? Are you giving bus passes? Is it just the kids are getting there, how they're getting their parents, you know, have the responsibility to get their kids to and from? So I think that's what they were looking for as far as transportation. And then I think the travel was, again, like you were saying, more towards like if staff have to go somewhere or something like that.
Yeah, if you have to do mileage, you have to do so if you're doing somewhere to do training or something like that, that would be under the travel budget. All right, next. Buses for field trips would be under transportation unless there's a separate line item for field trips, which I'm not sure if that is the case or not. I'd have to go look. All right, so once again, just in summary, or in sort of reminding, people often want to read the minds of funders. There are so many different funders in the Summer Funding Collaborative, and you can't match all of them, but you do have the list of the funders' priorities. So where your priorities match, try to highlight that in your proposal. So if, you know, several of the funders have career and college readiness as their strong thing, and that is your strong point, try to really highlight where those priorities are, where you're meeting funders' priorities in your proposal. Again, ask for what you need to succeed. If you don't ask for the amount of money that you're actually going to need, You're definitely not going to get it. It's kind of like you can't play the lot. You can't win the lottery if you don't play. Not that I encourage people to play the lottery, because harder odds than this. But just really make sure that budget that you make is realistic for what you need to complete your summer program, and ask for that number. That is your gap. That is your gap number. If it's the full program, that's fine. Just make sure it fits into that that margin of the realistic funding amounts, somewhere between 5,000 and 250. So you're gonna want to make sure that if you're asking for the whole shebang, which you can, there's no rule that you can't, that it is, you think it's a reasonable amount to ask for within the context of the Summer Funding Collaborative funding. And focus on your core. You can't tell them everything. Unfortunately, the character limits are really, tough. But if your core of your program is about social emotional wellness, make sure that sings through on the page of throughout your program descriptions. So be yourself. Do not try to bend or shape or gumpy yourself into another kind of program just because you think that's what they want.
I had a couple questions if nobody else did.
Yeah, that's exactly where we're going in just a section. We did want to highlight the group and individual TA sessions. So if you click on that, if you take a little picture of that QR code, it'll take you to the technical assistance page on the Summer Funding Collaborative. So you can sign up for your individual sessions. You can drop in. We're doing drop-ins this Friday and virtually, and Saturday in person, I believe. So lots more opportunities to get those questions answered, to have people look at things that you've already written, to get into the nitty-gritty of it. So yeah, definitely, take advantage of those.
And Ellie, one more thing I wanted to highlight, just when we were talking about having other people look at your writing and stuff like that, there is a rubric that shows like what the kind of criteria that they're looking for as far as what the community reviewers are going to look at and everything. Really look at that, and when you give it to someone else to review, give them a copy of that rubric also, just so that they can kind of see, what are you really looking for, and that can help you focus your writing in that portion, based on what the rubric is saying and everything. So use that as a tool when having someone else do reviews and stuff like that. I know, that's something that I'm planning on using, when I'm reviewing anybody's applications that they send to me for review and stuff like that. So use that as a tool so that you in your brain, when you're getting ready to write, you kind of know how to focus and what they're looking for. And then, also give it to someone else if you're having a parent or, one of the kids in your program read through it and everything, so that they can kind of understand what the score is going to be, how they're going to be scored.
These are just some other tips. We will send out the slide deck, so these links will be available to you to just click on. There's some helpful things in each of those for just writing grant proposals in general. So again, you will get all these links sent to you. And then yep, those are all those professional development sessions that are coming. And again, nice little QR code. You can take a picture of that. We think there might be some new ones since this little square was created. But if you go to the website, they'll all be there for sure. And then I think we're just down to questions. We can open the floor. And, our friends from the Summer Funding Collaborative can help us answer the more technical questions that we don't know. I don't know if we got a question, about the print button at the bottom. Did that get answered in the chat or by anybody via? Yeah, questions. Open floor.
I have one quick question. For last year, are we still using the same username and password for Salesforce? Okay,
I don't think so,
okay,
but that is a technical question that I believe will get answered in the chat by somebody else.
okay,
We don't deal with any of those like application computer technical things. So, but we will get that answered for you.
okay. I
Yeah.
did send an email. I'm just waiting to hear back from somebody because it's not working for me.
Okay, so I don't believe there's a print button, but this question will be noted and answered in the upcoming Q&A document. So just so folks saw that. Gosh, I don't know the order of all these hands that are up, but let's go to Mary and then Bianca.
I can wait because I've already had my questions. Go to somebody who hasn't had a chance yet. Go
Okay,
ahead. I can wait.
Bianca.
Alrighty. Obviously, my name is not Bianca. My name is Dennis Nelson. I'm actually National Partnerships Manager for the Anti-Defamation League. But my fiance is Bianca, and she is the founder of the Learning to Live movement. And I was wondering, how many last year? I think you said 90. There were about 90 something grantees. How many first year programs were awarded? You know?
That is a great question, and I do not know the answer to that question. That would be a question for our Summer Funding Collaborative's friends.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, it's how many of the applicants last year were first-time grantees?
I can check on that. Let me see if we have the data.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm just curious. We're definitely going to apply no matter what. Just curious as to, you know, the number of newcomers. We are a smaller nonprofit, but do a lot of our work right out of Baltimore. And
Great.
so thank you.
Any other questions? And I just saw that Kathy has to going into a budget session, but that just thanks for the advice. You don't know what's going to resonate with the readers, but anything you can do to avoid that cookie cutter generic, just every time you write a term down on the paper, you're like, can my reader picture that? Like, I was reading somebody else's proposal the other night and they had something about Mathlympics. And I'm like, what the heck is Mathlympics? I don't know what Mathlympics is. Does anybody know what Mathlympics is? Tell me a little bit, not a lot, because you don't have a lot of space, but tell me a little bit about what Mathlympics is. Because otherwise it's just a word on the page and it doesn't, you know, it could be the coolest thing since sliced bread, but I don't know that. I have no idea. I've been working in, you know, youth development all these years, and there's lots of things that people put on paper that I'm like, I wonder what that is. So I'd like to know more about that.
And Elliot, looks like Afia from the SFC answered that you have to create a new login and password. The portal looks similar, but it's not the same. So that answers that previous question about using last year's password.
Yeah, so fresh logins for everybody if you are a returning grantee. So great. More questions? While you're thinking about your questions, we have one for you. Which is, we need you to complete the evaluation for this session. I'm going to have Crystal flash the link to that, and I will also take it and put it in the chat, or I will try. I can't take it and put it in the chat. Can you have the QR code though? Everybody's using QR codes these days.
I had
And-
a
Yep, go for it.
I think Mary still had a question. I know I've asked a lot of questions. I had a question for the Summer Funding Collaborative. How do we find out which foundations or funders read our proposal? And what's the process for divvying up the proposals?
So there is no way to know for sure which funders review your proposal, unless they grant your proposal, then
Right.
obviously
They
they reviewed it.
hopefully.
Hopefully. And there is no set way for funders to choose how they review the proposal. It's pretty much up to their priorities. Because there's so many proposals, they can't read everyone. But if your proposal has priorities that matches with their priorities, they will definitely read it. Like West Baltimore Renaissance Festival, not festival, Foundation has a priority for organizations that serve students from West Baltimore. So obviously they would prioritize programs that also align with that. And if your program only serves students in East Baltimore or only serves students from East Baltimore, then they're probably not going to look at your application just because there's so many, and they need to make sure to look at the ones that match their priority. So as long as,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
you're fine. I was just gonna say, as long as it matches the priorities, then it'll most likely be reviewed.
So do funders get all the proposals, or do they get divvied up by Baltimore Promise staff? Like,
They have access to all the proposals.
and what does Baltimore Promise staff do to review the proposals? Last year, we got some pushback on, not an administrative issue, but on how we described the structure of our organization. We're told we were wrong by Baltimore Promise staff, but we weren't wrong. So, what besides, you forgot to attach your 501c3 or your Maryland charitable is outdated. What power does Baltimore Promise staff have in reviewing the proposals?
We don't have any power. The most that we do is take the applications for the community reviewers. Yeah, we don't really have, and train the community reviewers, but we don't have any power in what funders provide funding to which grantees.
Right. But if we cited the position that, according to our organizational development chart, has the most power in the organization, and Baltimore Promise staff sent us something and said, correct it, that's not right. So is that going to continue to happen?
Yes, we do a technical review of the applications, but in terms of granting, we don't have any decision power in that.
It wasn't a technical issue. It was a request to change our organizational chart. The question was, who was the ultimate decision maker in your organization? We said it was the chair of the board. We have an organizational chart, and we were told that's not true.
Okay, I will definitely mark this down and reach out to you in the coming days to talk more about this.
Okay, because we want to make sure it doesn't happen again. And we want to be able to trust that what we said is also passed on and available to funders.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I almost forgot my questions, so I'm gonna make it. Lord have mercy. You know how your brain is. I was listening to what y'all was saying. Hold on 1 second. You can go to another person. It's gonna come back to me. Training and education cost. Is that for staff?
Yes.
And I'm
yes.
gonna say why, because, well, it would be contracted then. I had a young lady who was going to teach the students CPR at a child's level. So, CPR training threw me off a little bit. So that would just be a contractor, right?
That would be, if it's for your programming, it'd probably be a contractor. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure. And the other one, like communications. Okay. So, Wi-Fi is kind of hard. So if I have to buy a hotspot, would that go under communications? I'm gonna say yes, but
It might, or if there's a technology line item,
mm-mm.
I would put it there. It's because it's more
Yeah,
of
we don't have
a,
a technology.
let me just pull up the different line items real quick.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm capturing the right things because, because some of the areas we may not be able to use the Wi-Fi in those buildings.
Yeah, I hear ya.
Yeah.
That is a continual problem with the world that we live in, is access to that good quality internet. Hold on, let me just get to that budget section real quick so that
I'm looking over the budget section. Ellie, it looks like it probably would fall under communication, because it would be a little bit different, because there's a utilities and a communication. And I would say it probably falls under like the communication portion of it.
Yeah, and
Because
that's,
it is a other down there at 19, but I didn't want to touch something if I didn't have to, because you do have other at number 19.
I think just you have the opportunity in that box underneath that to say, this is what's in this box, right? So
Okay.
I think it totally fits under communication to me. And I think you just say, this includes Wi-Fi hotspots.
Okay, and a couple of years ago, maybe last year, one thing about checking off if BCYF, if you want them to consider your grant, I know they have other stipulations about how much liability insurance you have to have.
Correct.
So where do okay, I'm gonna check off the box. I may not get them, right? They may not choose me, but if I check off that box, where would I want to put additional funding to capture that, or am I going to be allowed to capture that after the fact? Just saying,
would put it in your
come to
budget.
pass.
I would
may
put
not
it
come
in
to
your
pass.
budget, right?
Okay.
I would put it in your budget if you're applying to that, if you want them to consider you and you want to include it in your budget, I would have it in there. I wouldn't do it after the fact, because you're not going to be able to renegotiate your grant. So I would include it in your budget.
And that would be line 17 under insurance, right? Liability
Correct.
insurance.
Correct.
Okay. You might want to explain that for some of the first timers, why I said that. Just
No,
just
that
so
makes
they
sense.
know.
Yeah. We can add that to the Q&A, I think. Since
Okay.
you asked it here, and I think it makes sense to add it to the Q&A.
I have one last question. So my question is it's for the SFC, and it's around kind of what you feel the interest of impact is, and is it that you all want to see programs that are more of a quantity versus, I'm looking at a quantity versus quality is my question here. And so if we put together a program where we're only going to impact, where we set it up where we can impact maybe a small cohort of students, 20, 30 students, versus, doing something where we would maybe have to stretch ourselves a bit, but we could reach a larger quantity of students. Is there when you look at the opportunities, is it, well, this opportunity can clearly impact more students, so clearly we're going to go with the most students versus the strongest impact, if that makes sense?
I can't entirely answer for the SFC, but I can answer a little bit about the history of the funding. There has been a somewhat kind of biased towards larger scale programs. And you can understand that because part of the goal here is to scale summer for Baltimore, is to be able to serve as many students as possible. But the portfolio has always included smaller programs that do very specific skill building type things as well. So it's not an either or necessarily, but I think the portfolio, they try to balance the portfolio so that there are some comprehensive larger programs that are serving a lot of kids, and then also has some programs that are more boutique in some ways, right? But because they do something unique and special, it's valuable for them to be in the mix. It's hard to predict. Each year's a little different, but there is some effort to try to maximize the number of kids being served throughout the Summer Funding Collaborative.
Thank you. It just kind of helps us determine how we build out the application and the model for the participation. Thank you.
Yeah. I saw some hands go up. Mary, did you remember your question? And I see.
Well, I think I know it, but I just want to make sure. So under the question regarding the program description, and as you go down and it says define other population, that's only if you picked other, right? Because you have youth in foster care, LGBTQ.
Correct.
So if you pick other, then that means define when you pick other. It doesn't mean that you have to.
Correct. And that
Okay.
might not even because there's logic in the actual application when you go to fill it out. So
Right.
it's a little different than the PDF that shows you every question. So
Yeah.
if you don't pick other, it probably won't even give you that question. It's
Okay,
just in the
cool
PDF.
beans.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then
I
we
think
had
that's
another
it.
hand up too.
Yeah, Marcus, yes.
Oh yes, go ahead.
Yes, hi. We have already awarded last year Summer Funding Collaborative, and this is our second year. So I'm just asking about the main or major differences between last year and this year, if there's something in the process or in the funding. Last year was FFEE and BCYF, and I'm aware by the process by the last year, but I'm not sure there might be a major difference this year or not.
I don't think there are really significant differences. I mean, I can highlight a few. There's a little less money. That there's been some changes in who the funders are, which is all available in the back also in that recorded session on sort of the overview of the proposal. There's a different system for the application. Some of the questions have been reframed a little bit, but it's mostly the same basic question. So I don't think there's really huge significant differences from last year to this year that are gonna change anything major for folks who were previous grantees. Yeah, I think that's the major things. A few different funders, different application format slightly, and just a little less money, unfortunately.
So BCYF is the main one this year also. We had to work with Mary Warren last year, Mary Warren.
Yeah, BCYF is still one of the major funders in terms of the amount of money being given out this year.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. That's perfect. Thank you.
Have we answered all the questions yet?
If I could I was just going to respond to Bianca on his question. I forgot what your name is, Bianca. I know it's not Bianca.
Dennis, thank you.
On your question about you know, sort of the startup and the small programming, I would, you know, this is just advice, like take it for what it is. I've just, you know, been around a long time. I would use I love startups, so that's just personal. I would use your startup status or your kind of, you know, as a strength, right? And so you're starting small because you know this is going to work and you got some build out plans. And it may not be this summer, but you're going to prove something this summer. Not prove it to the funders, but you know, you're demonstrating something this summer, like a demonstration project, and then just ask for a lesser amount.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
I think that makes sense.
and
We do smaller
I
retreats.
yeah, and I think it's a real strength, right? To start small because then you're always delivering what you say you're going to deliver. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, and so I think that can be a real strength in your proposal and in your case for funding. I wish you really the best in getting it.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate it.
I think differently. I think when you start out and people see that you have okay, it's well written, I think you should go higher. I think you need to understand that the cost per child should be greater in your first year because you don't have anything. Like my sewing program, as an example, 2-3 years down the road, now I got sewing machines. But when I first
Right.
started out, I didn't have sewing machines. So
Yeah.
I had to put that in there. So don't go by me though. But I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just saying, I
that's a
think
good
a little
point.
bit differently. I think people give you grace in that first year to get some things that you would get equipment that could be used
Right.
again.
That's a
all.
great example
Yeah.
of a scale. No, I mean, that's a great example of a scale up because that once you've made that investment, that's already there, and the next year you don't have to have that, and so you can do more and do different kinds of things. So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and expand and serve more young people next year. So
Right.
it's really what you're demonstrating in the first year, based on your experience and your research.
I also think it's really, you can tell when you're reading a proposal if something is a reach that is too far
Mhm.
or it's hitting the sweet spot of where that organization is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you know, I think that if you have a smaller program and it is a proof of concept, I think that is a good thing to put out there, right? Like,
Yeah.
and also if you're planning to use this to launch pad something else, like
Yeah.
maybe you're going to do summer right now, but this actually is going to turn into an after school program as well, or a school year program.
Yeah.
I think that's something to indicate as part of what your growth strategy might be.
Yeah. Say it loud. Say it proud.
Awesome. Thank you all.
All right. Well, please fill out the PD session feedback. We want to hear from you so that we can also improve each year that we are here to support you guys. Please sign up for individual TA sessions or come to one of the group TA sessions. Like I said, drop in this Friday virtually and at the Enoch Pratt on Saturday. And let us know how we can help and ask those questions. Make sure those questions get answered. I can't stress that enough. Yeah, I think that's it for me. Crystal, you have any last words before we call it a night?
You're on mute.
Got it now. I just realized that. No, I don't have any last words. Just thank you all for attending. You know, and please use us as resources. We're here to help. We want to see, you know, as many programs get funded as we possibly can. So that's what most is all about. We're here to help you guys out and to advocate for you all and everything. So.
But this has been great, and I'm going to reach out to you, Ellie, and Crystal, and in regards to some other things that I do with the Anti-Defamation League as well.
Great.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And we will send it out, send out the PowerPoint slides and all that good stuff to you if not, probably tomorrow because it's late now. But you'll see them from us tomorrow. And we're doing a in-person version of this session on Friday at Union Mill. So if you have somebody you would like to recommend to come and attend that, please recommend them to come. We'll be happy to see them.
Yeah, definitely pass the word around to, other programs and everything.
Well, and this is Bianca. So, but thank you all so much.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Good
That's
night,
it.
thanks.
Bye-bye.